We're going to talk about foreign policy, but I want to ask you a political question because you're pretty well positioned. Good friends with Leader McConnell, correct?
Yes.
Good friends with President Trump? Good friends with Kevin McCarthy?
Yes.
What's going on with your three friends?
We're all going to be good. The conservative movement's alive and well, and I'm confident that we will move forward. We'll move forward together. Mark, you've been around this a long time. This is a party that has lots of different ideas. It's a Big Tent party with different factions and the like. That's all good. In the end, we come together, and we know that what's on the other side, the folks who are actively trying to undermine what our values and our understanding of the Constitution, that is a greater threat to the United States than any of us are to each other. And I'm very confident that this party will continue to be successful in the months and years ahead. And I'm counting on a good run in 2022.
So even if there are no policy differences, but there are personal differences, you're not worried about those either?
There's always people differences. I saw this as a member of Congress. Even inside I was on the anchor in the right end of the new Tea Party caucus that came into Congress in 2010. Even amongst those 60 or 65 of us, there were personality differences, different nature. You're working for a mission, you're working on a set of policies that matter, and you find a way to work together. I'm very confident that the conservative movement will continue to do that.
Okay. I want to ask you about Saudi Arabia, a decision by the Biden administration different than what your administration did in three ways. They released a report that you chose not to release. They imposed some sanctions on some parts of the Saudi government, and they did not sanction the Crown Prince. So I want to ask you about each of those, what you think of each of those three decisions. First, the decision to release the report showing culpability on the part of the Crown Prince in the view of the Intelligence Committee that you oversaw.
Well, I just urge everyone to go read what they actually wrote. It's not terribly different than what we said during our administration. Either they have an assessment that it was likely. They have a different view. They use this in a political way. I regret that. We never endeavored to use intelligence for a political purpose. That's precisely what they did by releasing this report, right? They wanted to bolster their view of the Iranians as good guys and the Saudis as bad guys. And that's just completely inappropriate.
Is the release of the report, you think, something that will damage the relationship between the two countries?
I don't know. We'll see. I know this. The United States ought not to do this kind of thing with respect to intelligence being released for a political purpose. When you read it, I've been reading intelligence now for 7 or 8 years, first as a member of the Intelligence Committee and then as CIA Director and Secretary of State. I can read what's in that. I know what they know and what they don't know. And it's most unfortunate. I saw a lot of headlines that were just wrong about what the report actually says and what it doesn't say.
Are you in a position to say what's wrong about those headlines?
Nope. Everyone can read for themselves.
Okay. The president's rhetoric on Russia notwithstanding, your administration is pretty tough on Russia and sanctions and in other ways. Yesterday, Joe Biden put out a statement saying, the president said that the United States did not like Russia in Crimea and didn't say he'd change it. Your administration didn't change it either. So what do you think about the Biden administration so far, its posture towards Russia as compared to your administration? And should the United States try to get Russia out of Crimea?
Mark, Russia was a hot topic during our whole 4 years for a host of reasons, not the least of which was a set of facts that clearly didn't show what the Democrats thought it showed with respect to President Trump and Russia. They got the story backwards. To your point, we were tough on Russia. We were tough where it was appropriate to be tough on Russia. In other places, we tried to find places we could work together. I'd remind everyone that Crimea was taken by the Russians during the Obama-Biden administration, not during the Trump administration.
But unreversed during your administration.
We were unable to reverse it. I hope that they'll be successful at doing so. I put out something that was the Crimea principle that says this is not appropriate. It's part of Ukraine, not part of Russia. And we worked hard to continue to convince the Russians the right thing to do would be to reverse course. We made sure they didn't take any more real estate. We worked hard in southeast Ukraine. We provided lethal defensive weapon systems to the Ukrainians in a way the previous administration refused to do. I'm proud of the work we did against Russia, but you're right, there's still more to do.
So are you as worried about the direction the Biden administration has headed on Russia as they are in the direction they're headed on China, or less worried about Russia?
Less worried about Russia. Russia is a country that, I was a soldier during the Cold War, that there has been bipartisan consensus with respect to Russia for an awfully long time. So I think, in the end, the Biden administration will continue to be pretty tough on Russia. I'm very worried about what I'm hearing, the initial things I'm hearing about how they're going to treat the Chinese Communist Party.
I want to ask you one more question and turn over to John on immigration. Do you think it will be weeks, months, or longer before the facts on the ground cause the Biden administration to have to review what it's proposed already on immigration?
I don't know what the timeline is, but it's going to happen. I think the American people are going to demand that we keep our borders secured. it's also unfair to the people of the Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. I saw this with my own eyes when I went down there. What happens to these people when they come to the United States is tragic, and we shouldn't lead them down the false path of hope. We should secure our borders. We should make clear that the United States is a sovereign nation. We'll have an immigration policy. We'll have lawful immigration, but we're not going to allow people to bum rush our border and come across in an unlawful way.
I know you said you don't want to put a timeline on it, but it's inevitable to you that the policies they've already put in place will cause there to be more people to come, a human crisis on the border that will necessitate a change in policy?
Yeah, from my perspective, I watched this happen in real time. When we put our policies in place, fewer people tried to come. When you reverse that, the opposite of that is almost certain to happen.
Thank you. I'll turn you over to John.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Secretary, I'll take it back to where Mark started with the political question here. President Trump obviously is going to make a speech tomorrow. A lot of people are wondering what he's going to say and specifically who he's going to talk about. Do you think he will address these challenges, specifically name names? What do you want to hear him say?
I've never seen President Trump pull punches. I haven't seen him do it publicly. I didn't see it when I was with him one-on-one in the Oval Office either. No, I'm confident he will tell the American people what's on his mind, the things he's thinking, the hopes he has for the future, and I hope that he does, because the things that we did, in my judgment, made America safer and more prosperous. America First is right. It's the right approach to governing both domestically and abroad, and I hope he'll talk about not only the achievements we had, but his vision for how we ought to move forward.
Also, when it comes to foreign policy, we saw this airstrike by the Biden administration in Syria. It seems to be completely reversed from their policy before. Are you surprised? We knew they were going to do a lot of things to go back to what they were doing under the Obama administration, but are you surprised how quickly and with the veracity in which they're doing this?
Yeah, that's been fast. The seats weren't warm, and they undid 60 or 70 pretty significant foreign policies that we had laid down. And I remember I ran for Congress because of the direction of America under President Obama back in 2010.
Right.
I'm disheartened to see them moving so quickly to undo. Look, there's always differences. New administrations come in and they have a different way of achieving things, and I recognize that. What I regret is that they didn't stop and take a look and see the places we had success. And then, if you think there's a different path forward, so be it. But they undid them almost as if it was being undone simply because it was a policy that Mike Pompeo had articulated or that President Trump had articulated.
You also look at this, you can't help but see some similarities with Obamacare when they rushed through. Not a lot of bipartisan support for something like this. You look at the COVID spending bill. You were part of that Tea Party awakening in 2010. Do you see a similar type of awakening of conservatism, a renewal of conservatism in 2022?
Not only do I see it, I feel it. I get letters and calls. My wife helps me flip through the mail that I get now. I think the American people can see pretty clearly that this is a direction that they don't want to go. And there's 70+ million people who voted that way in this election, and they're not going to allow this to go peacefully. They're not going to allow this to go quietly. They're going to assemble. They're going to discuss things. They're going to do everything you have a right to do as Americans. They'll do it in a way that's nonviolent, but they are determined to move forward on their understanding of America, which is I come from Kansas. It's kind of a down-home, simple understanding about hard work, family, and the way life ought to be and the way our founders had intended it to be.
And obviously, the obvious question here, nobody thinks you're done with political life yet. And even though you're taking a little break right now, what do you see as your path forward in politics?
Oh, goodness knows. If you'd asked me in 2008 if I was going to run for Congress in 2010, I'd have told you were just crazy. If you told me I was going to be the CI director in 2017, if you'd told me that in 2015, I would have told you were crazy. So I don't know. I care deeply about the things that I've worked so hard on now for close to a decade. I care deeply about things I did when I was a machine shop operator in South Central Kansas. I intend to stay in the battle.
Do you see yourself out there on the campaign trail helping out other candidates?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to start in a couple weeks. I'm headed to help a congressional candidate out in Nebraska. We're going to work hard. We have to retake the House in 2022.
We're probably not supposed to tell you this, but Senator Cruz said he'd consider you as his running mate. So there's that. Let the record show there's silence.
Great non-answer.
Didn't say no. Didn't rule it out.
It's a